Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every single episode, I feature a world-class expert on talent and recruiting and business building so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I am so pumped to talk with my guest today. He was down a very typical corporate route, very well educated, decided to take the plunge of entrepreneurship and start a business. And over the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about how he's done that and how he has built this company at a very rapid growth. Ryan Crane is the CEO of Tempo Sparkling Tea. That's tea with a purpose. And as so many people, Ryan was working at, investment banks and big companies and just got tired of being tired. And he gave a lot of thought and did a lot of research with his co-founder to find that the stuff that we're putting in our bodies with sugary sodas and chemically, artificially sweetened teas, and then, of course, coffee has really taken a toll on its bodies. So he and his team have created Tempo Sparkling Tea, which is basically a new line of organic, unsweetened tea to provide a healthy boost of natural energy. 0 calories, 0 added sugars, all that kind of stuff, really tying into this theme of healthy eating. Ryan, just really briefly, well-educated guy, certainly the smartest guy on this podcast, Princeton undergrad, MBA at Chicago Booth, went on to work at some of the finest investment banks, et cetera. And now he's brought about a decade of that experience to Tempo. And so with that, I'm thrilled to welcome Ryan Crane. How are you, Ryan?
Doing great. Jeff, thanks so much for having me. I think you tell the story better than I do.
I don't know about that, but very, very excited to have you. And I know our listeners are eager to hear a bit about the story. Why don't you just start at a 50,000-foot view with the 60-second overview of how you decided to start a tea company. It's not every day that someone does that. So something must have inspired you.
Yeah, it was a very interesting path for me. And it goes back a few years. As you mentioned, I was working long hours at a fast-paced job, and I kind of settled into the same daily routine that a lot of people face. I had my coffee in the morning. I was energized through the early part of the day. I'd go to lunch, and then 2-3 p.m. would hit, and I'd start to drag. And at that point, I'd be faced with this dilemma because I usually didn't want another cup of coffee because I had a couple, and I didn't want a soda or an energy drink because of the added sugars and synthetic additives that are in a lot of those products. So I just
and then there's the pure energy drinks, right? Which are a huge category with pretty controversial, right? In terms of long-term effect on the body and the heart.
Yeah, and there are some great ones out there, but for me, it really took a toll. I wasn't feeling great with the types of things I was putting in my body. So when that 2 p.m. slump hit, I just waited out, and I'd ride it out, and I tried to hydrate, and I knew there had to be a better solution. So from experience, I knew that high doses of caffeine always made me a little too jittery to function.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, when I did the research into caffeine and energy levels, it revealed that more stable, more consistent, lower doses of caffeine led to longer lasting energy and increased productivity. So that was perfect.
Yeah.
So the idea was to create a beverage that served that need without carrying any of the typical additives. And we wanted to do it with natural ingredients like tea with other functional ingredients. So with no great options around, we decided to create one. And after a ton of lab work, what we came up with was an organic, unsweetened sparkling tea that we think is delicious and provides a nice little boost of energy in that afternoon.
And what is the distribution channel? How do I get my hands on the product? Is it direct order, through Amazon, retail?
We do a lot of direct order from our website, tempobev.com. You can also find us on retail. Most of that is obviously in the Midwest where we're based in the Chicagoland area.
Yep.
A lot of great retailers here that carry the product, but we're available online for everyone.
And over time, are you planning on a dual distribution channel, direct and through retail, or you think you'll migrate towards retail?
I think it's always going to be both for us. We see the value. We want to provide access to a new type of product for people. And that access means putting it in the stores that they go to, but also making it available directly to your home,
yep,
or making it available out of your office. So our goal is to provide, a premium product available at an accessible price point.
What is the price point? A slight premium price point, or is it really just dead on with other teas?
It's relative. I think, it's a lot cheaper than a kombucha and might be more expensive than, the more mass-produced teas out there.
Yeah, the big names.
So,
got it.
Yeah, so I think it's different price points, different value. For us, we try to provide a premium organic product. So we're never going to be the cheapest product on the shelf, but we want to deliver value at a reasonable price point.
Got it. Very good. So now that we've kind of got the context of the product and the distribution channel and kind of the points of differentiation, let's talk about the people part of the business. Obviously, it's a relatively early company. You started when, Ryan?
We started this company, we really launched our product in 2017. Okay. There was a lot of thinking and research before then, but it was 2017 where we really hit the ground running. Got
it. So a year or two old. You're obviously a relatively small organization. And I know in the pre-interview, we talked about the fact that you mix, full-time folks and part-time folks, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Early stage company. What have you learned about how the hiring process at a big company, and you've worked at some of the best, compares to the hiring process at a early stage company? What's the same, and what have you had to kind of reimagine or do differently?
Yeah, it's very different for us. And I've seen both sides of it. And I think for the position we're in, recruiting is very high stakes. We're bringing on people, an additional person could be 5 or 10% of the whole team. And that person might get equity. And you're looking for a long-term relationship. So it's high stakes. And we have to come at it at a different angle than a lot of the larger corporate firms.
Yep.
In my experience, a lot of recruiting is focused on credentials and personality. When the person has the credentials, then you think of what is their personality and is that a fit?
Yep.
But I think that fit is still something that's being undervalued in this equation, because the way fit is looked at doesn't really dig into the motivations of the individual. I think that's something that we have to get right. Fit goes both ways. So we think about what works for the company, but we, as a small early stage company, have to think about the motivations of the individual and what they deem their compensation. So I think of, you can think of compensation, total compensation, as almost a formula.
Yep.
Typically, we fall into this trap of thinking that, a total compensation is your salary. So if you look at someone making $200,000 a year, another person making $50,000 a year, the common logic here is that person making $200,000 a year is getting higher compensation or a higher utility.
Right.
But to us, that doesn't really capture the full story, because in any job, what we're really just doing, we're trading our time for some value, some compensation. That's that recurring resource that we wake up every day and we trade. Yep. And we spend some of our time at work, and in return, we get some salary, and there's some time left over, and we spend time with the family or work on a hobby. And the opportunity and flexibility to do that is value too. And then there's learning experiences and things like that. So, when we think about, for the individual, an individual trying to maximize their total compensation means optimizing the total value you receive for your time. And you can think of that as a formula. The value you weight on money times the amount of money you receive, and the value you weight on time with the family times that. Yep. So the relative value of things like money, free time, working on a hobby is going to be different for everyone. And I think that's why we find there are so many people that might be working long hours at high-paying jobs, making a high salary, and wondering why they might not feel as fulfilled as some of their colleagues seem to be.
Right.
So for an early stage company like us, we really have to understand what we're bringing to the table and what we're not.
Each hire is so much more critical at a company of your size and stage. It can be a bet the company move, whereas at a large company like the ones you worked at, if you get a mishire, if you make a wrong hire, it's not the end of the world, right?
Right. I think you're right. And that's kind of like the fit for the company when we think about team building. For a large company, you think about team building as adding someone to fit some existing role or to replicate the work of someone that was promoted.
Yep.
And that might be the best fit to keep that engine running. For us, while we do emphasize the personality fit and the ability to do that type of job, for us, the best fit is almost the opposite. It's differentiation. Yep. So we want to bring a different background to the table, because that person brings a different thought process to the table. There's no real point for us in recruiting someone that thinks exactly like us, because we already have those opinions and perspectives. So our fit is someone that has a different perspective and is willing to challenge us on our opinions and broaden our depth of understanding, our depth of expertise. So it's almost polar opposite for us when we think about team building.
Got it. Well, at this early nascent stage, the business is only a year or two old, have you put pen to paper to kind of codify the DNA of the types of people that you're going to recruit as you as you grow or raise capital to hire more people, whatever it may be? Have you identified a DNA of these people?
In some ways we have, because we try really hard to understand what we're bringing to the table. We have, for a startup, I think people generally think, oh, that's a riskier path.
Right.
And they might think about risk in terms of income, and maybe for a stable income, we are riskier. But if you think about a startup delivering life experiences or professional development or leadership opportunities, then we might be the safest, most stable bet out there, because you're certainly going to get that.
Right.
So we try to think about people that value those types of things. And that's going to be the right person that stays motivated, wants to do the work, and is the best long-term fit for our company. We always say, we do a lot of events and demonstrations and exhibits and things like that. We always say, if you don't enjoy those things, it's not, the compensation calculation is just never going to add up.
Because a lot of your people are in the field in front of potential customers sampling the product, right?
Right. And if that experience is a drag, then it's probably not a great fit, because the opportunity to get out and talk to people and things like that is one of the things that we deliver.
Yeah.
So if someone gets value out of that, then the compensation calculation starts to add up. But if someone doesn't enjoy those types of opportunities, they could be, the best, most qualified, most credentialed candidate in the world, but it's probably not the right fit for our situation. So we try to really think about what we're bringing to the table and also what we're not.
Do you think it self-selects and that people only fit at a large company or an early stage company? What kind of person can actually enjoy and be good at both? Is it even possible?
I think fit and motivations are fluid, so it is possible. I mean, you see people that do really well at large companies, work their way up, get promoted, and have very successful careers. And I think that can be great. But you see some people that might start at a company like that, and it becomes a stepping stone to another opportunity. So it's very fluid. So I think part of that is the learning curve for an individual. What keeps people motivated? People always want to learn more, improve, develop themselves. And it's almost, a paradox that when we're delivering the best types of learning opportunities for an individual, we're making them more employable to other firms.
Right.
So we have to be comfortable with that. I think back to your question, can someone be a fit for both? Of course. And but it deals with what that individual's motivations are. And if you can kind of change the role up enough and make it fluid enough so that person can stay motivated, there's kind of a point that people hit where they've done one job for a few years where, they might be the best person in the world at doing that job, but it's no longer the right job because it doesn't carry the same motivation.
So you've talked a lot about motivation. I'm just curious, how do you get at someone's motivation, right? It's easy to ask a candidate what's your motivation, and they can kind of BS you, right? As you've started to recruit people, how in your process do you actually get at the person's true motivations? Not what they say they are, but their actual motivations.
Yeah, and a lot of candidates are very skilled at answering recruiting
Absolutely.
questions. I think we've all seen it. So that it's one of the hardest things to do. And for us, we try to take it outside of the typical recruiting process. I think the recruiting process has been optimized for efficiency, but you don't always get the best answers.
Yep.
So we try to listen to the person, obviously, and have conversations outside of that. And then we also, try to work with the person a little. So I think a standard approach, for recruiting a candidate is to show them the best parts of the business and look at how great it can be, and look at, here's our best day and here's the best thing we worked on, to try to pitch the company. But that, you're going to miss kind of what motivates the individual if you don't show them the other side. We sometimes want people to see the most difficult parts. What's difficult about the difficult parts about setting an event, the challenges
the ugly part, because you want to get them so there's no surprise, right?
Exactly. And I think that's kind of an opportunity for the candidate to filter. If they see that side of the business, like you said, the ugly side of the business, and they're still comfortable with it, then the motivations are probably going to be in the right place. So we try to do that. We try to work with them kind of on an individual basis to understand what they're comfortable with.
Got it. And what have you found in terms of your hit rate or accuracy in accurately assessing that? So when you think about the people you have hired, I'm sure you've had a bad hire along the way, unless you're the perfect recruiter, which no one is. What have you learned about how to fine tune or dial in the recruiting process to avoid those people who will tell you what you want to hear, but they're not really a fit?
Yeah, and I'd say the mistakes that we've made are generally on us, because you can get a good sense of what a candidate is, but sometimes you don't know what you're bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So when we've made mistakes, it's because we didn't do a good job of assessing those motivations or that fit.
You took a shortcut, you rushed, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jeff, can you remind me what your question was?
Yeah, sure. No problem. I'll edit that out. So the question was, what have you learned about in any time you've made a bad hire, right? Which always happens. What have you learned about what you might have missed that you can incorporate into the recruiting process the next time to be more accurate? In other words, where there are a couple of telltale signs that this person was not going to make it, was not, well positioned for the role.
I wish it were so easy, honestly. I think the biggest mistakes we've made is just, generally assuming that everyone carries the same motivations that we do, excited about the same things. So the biggest mistakes we've made is kind of projecting our own identity on the individual and not taking enough time to learn the candidate as is. Mm-hmm. You want someone that's going to stay motivated, want to work with you long-term, going to take proactive steps to be creative or find a new solution. And that means allowing the individual to be themselves. If you don't understand who that individual is to begin with, you're never going to be able to put them in those right positions to succeed. So the biggest mistakes we've generally made is kind of projecting our own motivations onto the individual without taking enough time to understand the person.
That's perfect. What you're saying is you really need to find, no, it sounds obvious and cliche, but you got to find the genuine match between the person and the role. And you can't force fit it, right? You may really desperately need to fill that role, but if it's not the right person, you're better off moving on, right? Leaving the role open for a while if you have to.
Exactly. And I think that's, there's this desire to, on both sides, for the candidate to grab what is perceived by the market to be the top job,
sure,
or the company to grab the highest credentialed candidate.
Yep.
But it doesn't always lead to the best fit. Like I said, keep returning to fit. Because generally speaking, each candidate is different, and each candidate tries to set themselves up as being unique. And if you're unique, that means you're not going to fit into the same box as everyone else. So we always we say good people do good work. And what we mean by that is that there's a fit aspect there. It's not just the highest credentialed person. It's the person that's most motivated for this role, best fits well with the team, best values the types of experience and learning opportunities that we provide. And a person that fits those types of motivations is probably going to do a better job than a higher credentialed candidate that doesn't fit. Yep. So we try to find the good people both sides of it, because if good people do good work, we're going to be fine.
Sounds like you really put fit right up there, even above education, what school they went to, the companies they worked at, right?
Yeah, and those are certainly indicators. I don't want to undervalue this. I think people that do well in academia or have done well in previous roles, there's some consistent themes there. There's a motivation or an ability to teach yourself things, or something that allows you to propel yourself forward and challenge obstacles and overcome them and be successful. And those types of skills translate across the board.
Yep.
So it's certainly an indicator.
But it's not sufficient.
It's not the only part. I think there's a lot of time and money wasted in recruiting, trying to go after what is just generally perceived to be the top candidate without really taking the time to dig into what is best for the company at that stage.
I think that's dead on, Ryan. And I give you a lot of credit at a pretty early stage in the venture to realize that and to kind of get your arms around it. It sounds like a fascinating business, Tempo Sparkling Tea. Ryan, how can people learn more about it, order the product, taste it, and become a believer?
Absolutely. Check us out. We're online at www.tempobev.com. You can email us at info@tempobev.com. It's TEMPO as in tempo and BEV as in beverage. We'd love to hear from people, positives, negatives, everything in between. We like chatting with our customers, and we like opportunity to interact. So
fantastic.
Look us up, send us a note, and we'd love to be in touch.
Ryan, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Jeff.